You want to learn Figma prototyping. You're a beginner and starting in 2025. Today I'm going to show you how to prototype, navigation, page transitions, different variant states for components. Even if all these things sound complex right now, we're going to simplify them. My name is Namat. I've been a design professor and a product designer for the last 11 years, and I'm going to show you how to simplify prototyping in Figma. Now, if you've been following the previous tutorials in this Figma beginners project, creating an iOS app, there are two videos from before. In the first one, I taught you how to use the iOS UI kit to actually use these tab bars and the navigation bar on top that are iOS components. And in the previous video, just right before this, we learned about Figma components, how to create cards, how to layer these cards with auto layouts within the interface. If you haven't completed those, I highly recommend that you do before you come to this prototyping video, because we're going to take this to the next level. We're going to connect all the screens together today and create a functional prototype. And don't forget, there is in the description a Figma file template that I created for you so you can follow along. So feel free to use it from down below. You can download it from the community, duplicate it to your drafts, and make your own changes. And hopefully you can create something very different by learning from this tutorial, and please paste it in the comments because I would love to see what you would create out of this. Before we start creating a prototype, it is very important, and that's how I work with my students, to know what is a prototype? Why do we need it? Just because a feature exists in Figma does not mean you have to apply it. Why do we need a prototype? Now, if you've worked with the UX process before, if you're coming here, even if you're a beginner, somehow you've understood or heard about the UX process, the user experience process. And what UX means, and this is not the purpose of this tutorial, but I'm going to go through it quickly. It's a whole process to design user-centered software, user-centered products that are focused on our users. So as part of that process, there's many different steps that we take. The first two steps, empathize and define, are about research, are about understanding our users in order to generate and create an interface that is suitable for them. The next two steps, ideate and prototypes, are where we are now. This is when you would use a product like Figma, because this is when you're generating ideas. This is when you're coming up with solutions. And prototype is the step that we're in today. So why do we prototype? Because we want to test and validate with our users. The very value of UX is that we're able to simulate a product and make it look very real, so we can test it with our users before having to execute it and code it. Programming is much more complex and time-consuming than design, and that's why the very value of UX is to test early with users before executing the product, before going to implementation. So that's why prototyping is very powerful, and Figma has incredible prototyping capabilities that allow us to make a prototype very realistic, and that's what you're going to see today. By the time we're finished with what we're doing today, our application will look so real that you can take it to users and test it with them. Today, we're going to learn how to prototype navigation. Once again, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about what is navigation. So to move between these different tabs, the primary navigation, which is the tab bar below, we're going to learn how to connect these together. And we're also going to learn about secondary navigation, how to move between a card list item and a card detail. We're going to link that and then learn about coming back. We're also going to learn about prototyping component states using Figma variants. Variants are wonderful capabilities within Figma that allow us to move the different states of components and also prototype that. Lastly, we're going to learn how to prototype some vertical scrolling and horizontal scrolling within Figma to create a feeling of a carousel like here, or to create a scrolling list of items and products. So last time we created this page of the iPhone, which is the home page. Now, what we want to create is a page that is similar to it, but has only the favorite cards or products that were selected by the user. So we want to duplicate this frame before we customize it. To do that, the shortcut on a Mac is Command D to duplicate. If you're on a Windows, every time we say Command, you replace that with Control. So it's Control D. I'm going to click that. And now my frame was pasted on top of the previous one. So I just clicked and dragged it. Another way to duplicate a frame, we're going to do it here, is to hold Options on Mac or Alt on Window and drag. What we want to get started with to create page transitions is to create 3 different pages that we're working with. So the second page here, and we can rename them on top so you're very clear what these are. Actually, let's make this frame into a section. If you're not familiar with sections in Figma, sections are a larger group area that can combine multiple frames, and it's a very good way to actually organize your work. If you're more interested in that, you can watch a tutorial that I have about design hygiene that shows you how to properly organize your file. So we're going to click Convert Section. With our frame selected, we're going to click Convert to Section. And now that this is a section, you can clearly see the name of the frame on top. So I'm going to call the first page Home. This is our home page. The second page, we want it to be Favorites. This is where we will have only the favorite products we're creating. And the third page, we're going to call it Cart. So now, with my tab bar selected, on this page, I can see the properties that were created by the Apple team to create properties for this component so we can customize it. I can see that tab 1 is selected. That's great. Now for the second page, I want the second tab, Favorites, to be selected. And you see, we were just able to change it with one click. When components are well created, it will be very easy to customize them. And now for the third page, that's going to be our cart page, we want the selected to be number 3. What we want to create right now is an interaction that allows us to move between these 3 tabs. So to start prototyping in Figma, you need to look right here on your property panel. You can see there are 2 tabs, Design and Prototype. When you're in designing mode, that's where design is selected. But when you want to prototype, this is when you want to activate this tab. And basically, your view will change. I'm going to zoom in on the interface for you to see better. So I'm going to click Command plus. Command plus on Mac, Control plus on Windows allows you to zoom in on your interface. If you have a trackpad, just zoom in with 2 fingers will allow you to move in or out on your interface. Now with my tab bar selected, when I'm in prototype mode, you will see there's no design properties, but what happens is on hover, you will see this plus icon. And what this does is it allows me to create an interaction if I were to click and drag. But now that's not what I want. I don't want my whole tab bar to be selected. I want my second tab, Favorites, to have an interaction. So I'm going to select the Favorites tab. I'm going to click this drag plus and connect it here. And if I were to zoom out, you will see it's creating an interaction and it's asking me, Figma is giving me the ability to specify what kind of interaction I want to make. So what we want to do is on click, we want to navigate to, and the page we want to navigate to is favorite. Do you see? Because we named our frames clearly. Now we know what is the destination. But otherwise I could have gone to any other frame, but I want to go to favorites. And now it's asking me what type of animation I want to create between these 2 elements. And here, it's important for you to know how things work in a specific platform. So when it comes to navigation, to follow usability rules, the transition that you want to have is always instant. I want you to go and look at your phone right now if you have an iOS phone. If you're using any native app and you're navigating between the tabs, it's always an instant transition. There's no animation in between. You click it, it moves immediately to the next page. So that's the one that we want to move between different tabs. Now, we're gonna create the same thing for the favorite. We're going to link that to the cart page. You can see the interaction. It's navigate to cart and it's instant. Figma always remembers the previous settings that I've created in an interaction. So because we changed the previous one to instant, it remembered that and it's recreating it here. Now, for the purpose of this prototype, we're doing this on a page level where we're just connecting home to favorites and favorites to cart. But there's another way to do this and we can look at it together. It's definitely more efficient to do this on the level of the component itself, but that's slightly more advanced for our beginners tutorial, so I will come to that later. In order to play this prototype or to show you this animation, how it's taking place, do you see how now we have this flow here? This is part of the prototype. It's the start of the prototype. Wherever there is this flow play icon, that means this is where your prototype will get started. So I'm going to rename this to tab navigation because this is what this flow is intended to be. And on the very top right here, you see the play icon. So I want to hit this. And once we hit play, you see we open a new tab where we see the prototype being presented to us. And when you click on this black screen, you have the ability, if you were to click on these settings here, to customize your prototype. So you can fit width and height, you can fill the screen with it, you can just fit the width, you can make it responsive. There is different behavior that would be suitable for the different apps that you are showing or products you're designing. So for a desktop, you would want different settings. Now, because we're viewing this on a phone, on an iPhone specifically, I want to show you how to customize your prototype with a device in the background. So I'm going to come back to my main file, not just my prototype. And here, under prototype settings, it starts with a default of no device, but we want an iPhone 16. And at this point, it's very critical that we make sure the background of our prototype matches the width of our screen. So if I were to select my home screen here and come back to design, I can see that the width of this phone that I've designed for is 402. Okay, to come to the prototype setting, you should not have any frame selected. When my frame was selected, we were seeing interactions specific to the frame, but with nothing selected, that's when we can access prototype settings. And I want an iPhone that has a 402 width so that my design looks perfect on it. So I'm choosing this iPhone 16 Pro. And now if we were to go back to our file, you will see our design is happening within this iPhone. Before we can see how these interactions are working, we want to go back a little bit to the design page. And I very quickly want you to just delete some of these cards. Just keep very few in your favorites. Maybe you can delete some of the rows we created with auto layout and just keep 2 images. And for the purpose of this tutorial, in order for us to move quickly focused on prototyping, use the template below to recreate these pages or take your time to recreate them on your own so you can connect them. But I'm not going to design them now, so I'm going to copy them because I've already created them. So to replace this current content with the content that I have copied, a very useful shortcut is Command-Shift-R. And what that does is it replaces your existing object with what you're pasting. So let me show you. If I've just simply done Command copy to copy, and if I come back here and do Command V, things will not be placed as I want them correctly. What I actually want, so I'm gonna hit Command Z to undo. These shortcuts may sound a little bit too much for you right now if you're just beginning, but if you've been using a Mac for a while, many of them are actually common sense for Mac users. If you're on a PC, Control Z is to undo. The same thing is applicable in Figma. So Command Shift R or Control Shift R on PC will allow you to replace the selected object. So do you see here? In my layers panel, the list of cards is selected. Command Shift R will allow me to replace the current object, which is what I wanted. So our favorite page is ready. And let's change the name for this in the title to make it favorites. I double clicked on it, but there's another way to do that because this is a component. With my component selected, I can change the title from the property panel, and let's call this cart. And in the cart page, maybe I want one card. So now we have our pages the way we want them. Let's see if the prototype interaction we created is actually working. So to do that, I'm gonna come here, select the first frame, or I can come to the prototype, click on the tab navigation, and I'm gonna hit play. And now you can see my prototype is right here. Let's test our tab transitions. So I am in home, it's selected. If I click on favorites, yes, we just moved to the favorites page. And if I click on cart, I want to make sure that my cart has an interaction to take us to the cart page. So now you can see if I click on cart, we also come to the page that has one cart that says cart. But do you see how I'm unable to move back and forth? And that is the realistic behavior that we want to create. So rather than doing this on a page level, this is when you start thinking that you want to do things on a component level, because I don't want to come back here and create so many interactions, the same interactions as on each page, link favorite back to home, link cart back to cart. This becomes tedious, especially when you're working with multiple pages. So let us do this properly, which is on the level of the component. Now that you understand some basic prototyping, you're seeing the problem we're facing, and let's take prototyping to a more advanced level, doing it correctly and effortlessly, because we don't want to do a million prototypes, we only want to do it once. So let's do it on the level of the component. So I'm going to take this component and I'm going to click Option, Drag to drag an instance of it. And now with this tab bar here, I'm going to create the same interactions that we want on the level of the component itself. So what I'm saying, let's double click and go on home. So with my home selected, I'm going to create this interaction. If I click on it, you will see in the menu. If you can't see it in the menu, always come to the property panel. If you click on it here, this is the menu that you will see. The trigger is on tap. Of course, you can do other things, but we want it to happen on tap and we want to navigate to home. We're going to create the same interaction for favorites, and for the cart, we're going to click on the plus button and drag and go to on tap. We want to go to the cart button. And again, it's an instant animation. Now you can see all these three are connected directly to my component. Let's go and remove the other interactions that exist. And now all the interactions are coming from this component. I want to make sure though that it's the same component that exists in all three pages. So let's copy this component. I'm going to come back to the design and I'm going to replace it in all these screens. So if I do Command V, see what happens. Auto layout will get messed up. This is not what I wanted. I don't want to simply paste it. I want to paste it in place. So I'm going to click Command Z to undo. I'm going to come here, select the tab bar. And if you're not sure what layer is selected, always look in your layers panel. I can see it's my tab bar that's selected. I want to replace it. So I'm going to click Command Shift R, R for replacing. And you see it pasted it right where I want it. If you're on Windows, always replace the command with Control. Control Shift R. Let's do the same thing here. Command Shift R. And I want to change it once again. So favorites is selected. So I'm coming to the component property, going to number 2. And once again, on the cart page, Command Shift R. And this time I want the third tab to be selected. Let's test it. So we want to hit the play button, and coming to our home page, I'm going to click favorites. Yes, it moved. Cart, it moved. Favorite, again, it works. Home, it works. So the interactions are now available to us on the level of the component, and we didn't have to create them at the level of every single page. Awesome. Now that we prototyped our tabs and made them realistic, let's create one more page interaction that involves secondary navigation. So, what is secondary navigation? Let's go to the design so you can see things more clearly. When you're on an app, and I invite you to look at the different apps that you have on your devices, there's always primary navigation. This could be a hamburger menu with different things, or generally on a native app like an iPhone or an Android, it's very often a tab bar, and it's permanent, where you can see this is home, this is favorite, this is cart, whatever is your third page, and it's always there. Now, this is what we call first level of navigation or primary navigation. Now, secondary navigation is when you've dug deeper inside an element. So, for example, in something like this, in a list view, it's when you would click one level and go a level deeper. And generally, that is when your back button will appear. Back buttons, please remember this very important navigation fact for UX. Back buttons do not appear on primary level. Back buttons only appear when you've dug a level deeper. So on this page, I am still inside my home, but I've gone inside the card details. So basically, what we want to create is that movement between this card. When we click on it, we will come and see a detailed view of the product. Let's do this. If you wish to create this card detail page, please do it on your own or use it from the file. For now, I'm just gonna bring it to my frame so we learn how to prototype with it. And let's say our user have gone to the cart. They have this element, but they just want to review its details. They want to make sure it's the right element before they actually move to see its details. So, to create an interaction, we're going to a prototype mode. I'm going to select the cart component and make sure it is the actual component. Do you see when you're double clicking in Figma, sometimes you may click on the right element. So here, if you followed my previous tutorial, you know that we created a row of multiple cards, and then we have a component. In the case of the cart page, we don't really need that list of cards. That was an old thing, so I'm gonna delete it just so things are more clear. This is the cart component. Now I'm sure it's well selected. And on the level of the cart component, when I hover, there's this plus. I want to link it to this detail page. And what I'm saying to Figma, see if this was on hover or while hovering, it's different, but for us, it happens to be on tap as well. I want to navigate to service details, and I want it to be, now, what did we say? We're digging a level deeper. So at this point, it's not instant. Some of you may have already caught on. If you're using your phone very often, you know that when you click on a list item, what happens? There's a transition, and it's a slide to indicate to the user that we're going one level deeper. So what we actually want is we want a slide in. And Figma shows you how that looks like. Do you see here? You have the ability to ease in, ease out. You have the ability to control the duration. Let us see how this looks before we actually change the details. And we've created this interaction on the level of the cart, so that's okay. Let's stay in the cart page. If I click on this element, it slided in. And actually, that is the correct behavior. If you look at iOS, those navigations are very standard for the iOS platform. Now, I want to create the opposite, which is if I click on service here, I want to be able to go back to my actual card. So let's do this. I'm going to come back here. First of all, we're creating this interaction on the level of the cart. So it's very important that my primary navigation reflects where I am, because that does not change it. So if I were to click on the card when I'm in home, I should stay in home. But here I am in cart, so I'm coming back to selected. I'm making sure the cart is selected. And let's change the names a little bit here. So if I select this navbar component, I'm going to call this actually Dahlia. Generally, this is your product name. Let's give it a good name here. So I'm changing this plant display into Dahlia. This is a Dahlia product that's in my cart. If you haven't seen a Dahlia, it's the most beautiful flower. I planted in my garden. And we want to click on this Dahlia and come right here to the detailed view of a Dahlia bouquet. Let's make sure here also it doesn't have an H. Sometimes it's written with an H, sometimes it's not. And we want to say come back to, basically in iOS, you always go back to where you are. So in this case, we're creating an interaction for the cart. So I want to come back to my cart. And now that I changed the design for this button, I want to come to prototype and I want to create an interaction. I'm going to click on the plus icon and back to cart. And what I want to say is when you are clicked, go back to cart. But there's something different about this. This is not just a regular slide in or slide out. It's such a common transition, the back transition, that Figma has created a separate prototyping feature for it, which is called back, because it's so common. So rather than go and manipulate the details, I'm just going to click on back and let Figma do its magic. Coming back to see this in the prototype. My prototype updated live, and now I am back to my items. The next thing we want to look at is how to change states for different elements. And states are something that changes for components. So do you remember our card component? Inside of it, we created two nested components. One is the star, which allows the user to add an element to their favorite. And secondly, we've got this add to cart button. So what we want to do is make the user click on a star and have the star fill and change color. We also want them, once they click on the add to cart button, we want that button to change to added. So when they're looking on their element, they can see it's actually added to the cart. In order to achieve this, Figma has a feature called variants in a component. In the previous tutorial, we learned how to create components, but today we're going to take one more advanced step and look at variants. What are component variants and how do we create them to allow this beautiful prototyping interaction? So to work with variants, we're going to get started here with our card. Let's get started with the button because the button is slightly simpler. So I'm going to expand. So I want to select this button. Once again, always look at your layer panel to understand what are you selecting, to make sure you're selecting the right thing. And do you see this symbol here? This symbol tells me when I hover on it, you can see in the layers panel, it says it's an instance because this is an instance of the button component that we utilized from the UI kit, the Apple UI kit. So I'm going to click option and drag to take it outside of this card component. Now I have a copy of it. And once again, this copy is an instance because it's this empty losange. Now, what is the component sign? This one, where you have 4 small lozenges on top of each other. That would be the original component. Now, this button is an instance. And to give it a different state, even though it's a component in the UI library, I want to have a local component for it within my file so that I can create a variant for it. How we do this is, now it's an instance. So we want to come back to design. And do you see here next to the selected button, I have the option to create component, and you can see the 4 small lozenges on top of each other. So I'm clicking create component, and now I can see from the icon near the button that this is my button. Let's give it a different name so it's clear. So we're gonna keep button, and I'm just gonna add a dash, add to cart. And one useful way that engineers use so they don't create space while naming stuff is you use capital for the first letter of the word. So add to, and then capital C for cart. And now it's visible to me that this is the add to cart button. What I'm gonna do here, this is the actual component. I want a variant for it. And again, what's a variant? A variant is an instance of that component, but that behaves slightly differently. I want to be able to replace them and switch them between each other. And in the case of this component, what could be a variant of this component? We can have a hover state for this component. However, we're creating an iOS app on mobile, and on mobile, you don't have a hover state. So I just want the clicked state of the same component. So to do that, to create a variant, you come to the very top with your component selected. You see the option to add variant. This plus within the lozenge, and you can see it on hover. There's a tooltip that tells you this is my add variant button. And what happened now is within this purple area, Figma created a copy of my actual component within this component set. And it was gonna give me the option to customize it and name it properly. So first, let me change it to what I want it to be. In the case of this variant, I'm gonna double click on it. What I want, once the user clicks on add to cart, I want the cart to change and say added. So I'm gonna come here. Do you see the fill color for my button? It's blue. And this is coming from the iOS library. I'm gonna search within the iOS library for green, and yes, they do have a green option. Great. And now I want to change this cart icon to be a check mark. So like we learned in the first tutorial, we're gonna use iOS symbols for that. You see the check mark, I'm gonna right click, copy the symbol, and I'll come here, double click on my cart. I could do Command V, but once again, here it works because this is a text with iOS symbols. So I pasted it, and then with that selected, I can come and change the color as well to green. Perfect. This is what I want my button to happen. This is how I want my button to do when it's clicked. But now nothing is changing. So how do I create an interaction, a prototyping interaction on the level of the button? With my component set selected, I'm gonna come to prototype, and I'm gonna double click the first element, and then I have those plus buttons, and I'm gonna move it to the second one. But as you can see, my names are still very unclear. Property, variant. So let's go change our names properly to reflect what we've created. I'm gonna select my component set, come back to design, and here on the very top, you will see the properties for this component set. So if I click on this icon that has edit property, it opens my property to the side, and it's asking me to give it a name. So what's the name of this component set? It's button, and I'm going to use the short name for it, BTN, and it's a state. So this is the state of my button. The first state for my button is default, but let me call it, yes, it's default actually, there's nothing selected. The second state is clicked. And now we have a clear name for our property with this component selected. We have a default state, and we have a clicked state. Now I'm coming back to prototype, and what I'm saying, this is the interaction. Let's double click on it to see it. We're saying on tap, when you tap this button, change it to, because we're changing state, Figma recognized automatically that this is a variant. So it defaulted instead of navigate to change to, because we're basically changing the variant state to clicked. And the animation I want is instant. Yes, that's preferable. And I want to do vice versa. For the purpose of this prototype, we're going to make it simple. You can have so many multiple states and move between them. But here, all I want to do is when I click it once again, it's going to go back to add to cart. So we will change it to the default state when you click it a second time. I want to make sure that this new button we created is what lives inside my cart component. Because if you come to my cart component that we previously used now, if you select this, this is just a random button that we used from the Apple library. But we actually want this new button, add to cart, that carries our interaction to be nested within the card. So how to do this? I'm going to select one of the elements. I'm going to click Option, drag. Remember the best way of doing that? We just went through it. I'm going to click Command X to cut it. And I'm going to zoom in. And I'm going to double click on my current button. Make sure the button is selected. Do we want to paste? No, we want to replace. So what's our shortcut? Command Shift R. And now I can see where I had button selected. Button Add to Cart has replaced it. And now, because this cart component is the main component that I've used inside all of these, whatever change I made in this cart component should be automatically reflected in all of these. Let's verify if this is what happened. I'm going to come back to my prototype. This is live. I'm going to navigate to the home page so we have more of these items. And if this worked, when I click that cart, it should turn green. There you go. Oh, but it still says add to cart. That's not what I want. We wanted to change it to added. So let's come back to our design tab. It definitely worked, but we don't want it to become a green add to cart. We want it to say added. Awesome. Now let's go back and check. There you go. It reflected right away. That's the beauty about the Figma prototype. Any change that you make, it reflects right away. Let's click on all of them. That's the advantage of having done this inside the component. Can you imagine if we had to prototype this inside each one of the cards? It would have taken forever. So making the change, making the prototype inside the variant of the component, that is the power of Figma. Because now every time we use an instance of this component, it carries the logic of the prototype. So now, to verify the other way is working, I'm going to click on that button again, and yes, it came back to regular add to cart. Of course, this is not ideal UX. There's other ways you want to do that, but that's not the purpose of our tutorial. So this interaction is working. Now, let's work on variants too and change our favorites icon to become this purple version of the favorites icon. One thing that I wanted you to note, because we're working with SF symbols, the symbol in iOS is actually a text element. It behaves like the SF typography. But you can do the same concept of variants with a regular icon. And if you need an icon plugin, you can come here. There's so many wonderful plugins created in the Figma community. We've covered that before. One that I like to use is Iconify. You can search for a star and get 2 of them. So what you have to do is have this icon, create a variant of it, and change it to whatever shape you want. And the most important step is you want to make sure what's inside the card is an instance of this component. Click one of them, either one, it doesn't matter. I'm going to take the top one because that's my default. And I'm going to Option drag. Now I'm going to Command X to cut it. I'm going to go inside, select the current star, which as you can see, it's just a simple text layer. It's not a component. I want to replace it. Command Shift R to replace it. And now this is my favorites icon. And let's go in here, see if this is reflected in our prototype. What happens when I click on it? It's not clicking because we haven't prototyped the interaction. Yes, our star is changing everywhere. And if I were to click it again, it will go back to the normal. There you have it. That's variants to change the state of your component in Figma prototyping. Now, the last thing we're going to look at is how to create that effect of scrolling within a list and horizontal scrolling of a carousel within Figma. Command period or control period will hide or show your Figma UI. We want all these cards to scroll inside the UI. So I want to show you what we've done here. If I were to select home, I want to make my iPhone frame bigger for you to see what's inside. I've created so many rows of this card in the previous tutorial. You can see we have multiple rows. And if you're to look at the structure, the way we created them, we created multiple rows in a list of card. How do I make this content scrollable? First of all, we want all the content, as in the list of card, to have its own frame. And with this selected, you can come here and see. Right now, it has a scroll behavior. The default is to scroll for parent, but the overflow says no scrolling. So let's see if that's what's happening actually here. If I come here, I'm trying to scroll, nothing is happening. To allow scrolling, with my list of cards selected, I want vertical scrolling. That's the first step I want to take. The second step is I want to make sure that my content, which is the multiple rows of cards, is longer than my actual card content. So do you see? This is the edge of my list of cards. I want that to end at the bottom of this iPhone frame, and that I have more content below, like you've seen. If we were to drag this frame, you will see we had so much more content below it. We have it hidden right here. Now we will come here and look. Scrolling is happening in a beautiful way. Uh-oh, but there's a problem. Do you see? My navigation bar on top is being hidden when these cards are scrolling on top of it. That's not what I want. I want this navigation bar to stay fixed. I want the scrolling to happen behind it. So let's fix that. I'm going inside the app and I will select my navigation bar and I'm gonna click position, fixed, stay in place. Let's test that. Here you go. All the elements are moving behind it. Now, for this particular iPhone, it has a transparent background. This is the iOS default, so you can see as the elements move behind it. Now let's go and create horizontal scrolling. So in this detail page, I want these flowers to move to the side. To create this horizontal carousel, I'm gonna do this on the level of a frame for you so you can see things more clearly, because if we were to do it here, you won't be able to see all the items in it. So we have one image. We already know from the previous tutorial that we can fit 2 images on this screen. I'm gonna duplicate this. The shortcut by now, you know it. It's Command D or Option Drag. I dragged another card. And now I wanna create an auto layout on these cards. So I'm gonna select both of them. So one of them is selected, Shift, and I click on the second one. Both are selected. And to create an auto layout, I can either right click to add the auto layout, or our shortcut is Shift A. And now we have the second frame. Look in your left layers panel. Let's call this frame Carousel. So this is gonna be my carousel, and I wanna make sure I have so many photos in it. So I'm selecting the last one. I'm gonna click Command D because we created an auto layout. Now Figma knows I need more of these. Another Command D. And like you've learned in previous tutorials, we're gonna use this beautiful plugin Unsplash to change these images. And you may be creating something completely different from me, so go nuts with it. Part of the rules of scrolling that we discussed before, for an element to scroll, the container needs to be bigger than the content itself. Let me show you how to do this from scratch. We're gonna remove this. I'm gonna come here. Within this page, I'm gonna drag an instance of this carousel, that we created. So Option drag. I'm gonna do Command X to copy it. Let's go back to the Design tab, and under this paragraph, Command V, I've pasted the carousel. For an element to scroll, there needs to be a container that is smaller than the actual content. So to do this, I am going to right-click on this element and click Frame Selection. And basically, I'm creating a frame that I will call Carousel Container that is bigger than my actual frame. And inside this carousel container, you can see my carousel. This is my carousel container. It's as big as the content. That's not what we want. We want to resize it to become smaller than the content. So to do this, I'm clicking and dragging on it, and this is where I want it to end. So now you see this is a carousel container. It's just small. It's only within this page. And my carousel, however, is much bigger than the container. And with my carousel container selected, I will come to prototype. I will say scroll horizontally. I want you to scroll horizontally. Now when we come to our prototype, you will see we're able to do this horizontal scroll, which beautifully shows my images. Now, I want to go one step further, which is to allow the user to know that you can scroll through these flowers and there's more, that this is not just static. I want to start somewhere in between. So I want to move my carousel within my container. So this is a container. It's a small piece. Remember, this is the carousel, which is the bigger piece. So I'm going to select my carousel and just use the arrows on my keyboard. The left arrow, I'm moving all my content left. One click on your arrow is moving elements by 1 pixel. I want to move faster, so I'm going to click Shift and left arrow, and this is moving things by 8 pixel for me. This is what we call the nudge amount. In Figma, it's called the nudge amount. I show you in more advanced tutorials how to change that. But Shift arrow is moving elements on my page. Now my user knows that they can scroll between different images. And of course, we can design this however we please, but let's test if it's working. And here you go. It starts like this. Now the user knows how to move between the carousel. And this is it. Hopefully, by the end of this tutorial, you've moved from a novice in Figma prototyping, you knew nothing about it, to an expert. Because what we've covered here is almost 90%, if not 95%, of any interaction you need to do within Figma. Once you've learned this, it's very easy to experiment with the different details and customize things to be suitable for your product and your user. Thank you so much for staying this long in this tutorial and sticking with me. I hope this was useful for you. Please support me by subscribing to my channel, liking, and most importantly, please comment with your version of this file. You're able to use this product for anything that you create. Use the template, customize it, and show me what you've created.